Start spreading the news.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
New York, I love you. I love New York.
What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron, and we are brought to you by the Off the Ball podcast and my bookie. Make sure to use promo code Off the Ball for up to 1,000 in sign up bonus when you sign up for my bookie. So make sure to use that promo code Off the Ball. We are also live on the Nothing But Net radio channel on Dash Radio, and on today's show, I got a special guest with me. We're going to dive into all things New York Knicks. Yeah, shocking. We're going to talk about the Knicks on the podcast. But you know what? I got this individual in particular I had to get on the show. You know, he has risen. He has become a superstar in Knicks Twitter. So I had to get him on the show before he gets real big. So I got Anthony Pacheco on the podcast. What's going on, brother?
What's good? What's good? How you doing? I don't know. That intro was a little crazy, but I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna just take it. I appreciate it.
Hey man, I gotta show you your flowers, man. You definitely been killing it. You know, you're definitely one of the best followers on Twitter. So talk to me before we get into everything Knicks and all that, and talk about the season and you know, all the free agency and the whole off season. Talk to me a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So I don't know. I just started doing these like after the game threads where I guess I just went over what was going on, things I noticed. A lot of the times there's things that happen in a game. There's so much that happens even in one possession that you don't even notice till you watch a second or a third time.
Of course.
And it adds a different layer to the game. It's fun to watch. I don't know. I've always been interested because you get to really notice like maybe coaches' adjustments or how a player was getting picked on defensively. It's just I've always just kind of been interested in that. So I started tweeting it, and then I don't know, people like them, so I just kept doing them. And yeah, that's mostly what I do right now. I write a little bit for the Strickland every once in a while, but yeah, other than that, I just do mostly like film breakdowns.
Yeah, I don't think people realize there's so much that goes into a play other than just like the bucket, right? People see the bucket or whatever, and they're like, oh, that's what happened. But there's so many different things that happen in a possession or possessions that led to that such bucket or whatever, you know? And I don't think people realize this. Just everything that you may not realize something that's going on off the ball, you know, in the corner that may have led to, you know, the bucket. So you definitely break it down to where people can understand everything that's going on in those possessions that you do post, that you tweet, you know, pretty much daily.
Yeah. Sometimes the most interesting thing happens off the ball. Sometimes it's not even on the ball. You know, maybe it's a screen, maybe somebody fell asleep. It's just, it's fun to kind of go back and like really see what all 10 guys on the floor are doing. Because when you watch the game live, you're mostly paying attention to the ball. Even it's just natural. It's like you want to see what the guy with the ball is about to do. But yeah, when you watch off the ball, you see some pretty interesting things too, though.
Hey, and that's why the show is called Off the Ball, because playing ball, I'm so big on, you know, everything off the ball, because to me, especially when you're playing like pickup ball and everything's trying to just try to figure out how to score with the basketball, right? But it's like, hey, if we actually set things off the ball, we set screens and we set, you know, we do all this stuff, can make it easier. So that's why that's why off the ball. That's why I named it Off the Ball, because it was such a big thing for me playing in high school and all that, is making sure we get things off the ball so we can make it an easier possession and get an easier basket. So that's kind of how off the ball. But you're absolutely right. There's things that we don't see off the ball and all that make, you know, stuff happen. So you definitely, you know, you definitely show that in all your videos and clips that you do. So let's talk about this Knicks season. It was a season unlike previous, right? You know, we had it was a playoff season, 41 wins, 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. First of all, give me your thoughts going into the season and your and what did you think was what was your analysis on what you think would happen going into the season before you know everything happened?
To be quite honest, I didn't think it'd be a fun season. I thought it'd be another, you know, 2017 type of season. It didn't, you know, the vets that came back from last year didn't really play well last year. the young guys, I expected them to make improvements. I think for the most part, all of them made like some significant jumps. I don't think anybody really expected Emmanuel quickly to be that ready to contribute immediately. Yeah, like nobody saw that coming. Obi, I expected more from him initially, at least, but I was really satisfied with him by the end of the season. But just overall as a team, I think you couldn't ask for much more. But going in, expectations were pretty low.
Yeah, I agree. I thought we would definitely be an improving basketball team just by default because, you can't get much worse. But I didn't expect us to be, 41 wins and
sure.
getting home court advantage in the first round. I mean, I just thought maybe the Knicks contend for, what a play-in spot, maybe one of those at best. But, 41 wins and what we saw this season was just, I didn't see that coming at all. Though maybe next season, we make that stride, but, a year ahead of schedule and all that. And you mentioned quickly in Obi, a lot of people had it reverse, right? Everyone thought Obi was going to be the emperor because even I do so much draft stuff and I'm like, oh, he's ready. He's mature. He's 23 and all that. He's going to be 23, before the season. Like he's going to be mature. He's going to be ready to play right away. Where quickly was like, okay, he's going to take a little bit longer, to acclimate to the system and to the league. And it was the other way around.
Yeah, exactly.
Where Obi looked like, he was the 19, 20-year-old and quickly looked like that he played 4 years in college and looked ready and prepared, so that to me was the biggest thing with that too, biggest shocker too was the flip around where Obi kind of struggled and all that. So, what was there, and obviously RJ Barrett also, his early season struggles, but then it felt like around, the new year, he finally picked it up and played better and all that. Julius Randle, obviously, I mean, this was a man that Knicks fans despised last year. Then, there was a point like he's going to get, I mean, I don't know if you saw the press conferences a lot, before the season, but there was a lot of press conferences where he just has his head down and he's just like, he's going with the motion. It's like, oh, he's gone. It felt like that. And then in reality, drafting Obi as maybe his potential replacement kind of maybe put a light in the fire that only, that the next year contract not being fully guaranteed. I think there was a lot of factors why Julius came.
Had a lot of motivation.
A lot of motivation, came into camp in shape. Tibbs said that. So, who were some other players that for you, really surprised you either on the good or for bad?
Mitchell Robinson. He only played 30 some odd games around there, but I thought he made some significant strides. I think when he was healthy, for the most part, especially like that January, beginning of the season stretch, he was their second best player. I don't think you can really argue that as well. He was really good. He stopped getting into foul trouble, which was like his big thing from his first couple of years. So I was really impressed with Mitch. I think I tweeted this the other day, but I think he's pretty underrated.
Yes, very.
In part
people want him traded and Noel started, and I was like, okay, Noel, let's pipe it down. Let's pipe it down. I know Noel's playing good in his replay, but let's slow it down.
There's a pretty significant gap between those two. I know they play very similar. I think it's easy to think that Mitch is replaceable because a lot of people categorize Mitch as like not having skill or whatever because he just runs and dunks. But there is a lot of skill that takes him off. Like even, as we see, just from like Noel and Mitch, just catching the ball is a skill.
He has hands. I mean, we all know Noel has stone. And you tweeted about Noel and not being crazy about how much he got and coming back. But you're right. Like his hands alone, like Noel on a simple wraparound, you just hand it off, he drops it every time. It's like there's a reason why he's been what he was. These last few years bouncing around a little bit. But you're absolutely right. There is still a big gap in Mitchell and Noel. Like, and we saw that in the playoffs too, right? Noel was kind of like kind of not playable at times. It was looking bad. And where if Mitch is there, Mitch might have made it. We may not still win, but at least it may go 6-7. Instead
it was a series,
more
entertaining series with him. Yeah,
exactly. And talk to me about Mitch's, missing Mitch for pretty much the season and in the playoffs. Talk about that effect on the team because it really showed once we got to the playoffs, especially with Trae Young and all the dropping and all that. It really affected that series for the Knicks So talk to me about how important, because like you just mentioned before with Mitch, he's kind of underrated now, where we may have overrated him a year ago and now he's underrated. So talk to me about the importance of him and to this team.
I mean, just if you want to just keep it to the Atlanta series, because I think for the most part, the regular series, the Knicks kind of, Gibson and Noel and even Powell, whenever he came in, they held it down for the most part. But if you go to the series against the Hawks, that's where you really notice the difference, where not having a center who, with Noel, the Hawks were able to just kind of ignore him offensively. Capella just shaded over towards Julius, and Julius was dealing with 2-3 guys just like focused, lasered in on him every time he touched the ball. So the difference between a Noel and a Mitch is a lob threat, and not only is he a lob threat, but he's like probably one of the best in the NBA just because of how quick he gets off the ground, how high he can jump, how he's just an insane athlete. But the difference is if you were to shade over, if you cheat off of Mitch, he's very easy. He'll catch the ball and he'll come down with it, and he's very good at finishing around the rim. You also notice the difference defensively. Mitch is incredible defensively. He can move his feet really well. He has really long arms, and his wingspan is incredible. He can jump. So when Trey's coming off that screen, which I think everybody saw this already, but when Trey comes off that screen and whoever's guarding Trey is stuck behind the play, and it's just it's a 2v1 bit essentially. Do you want to guard Trey's floater or do you want to guard the lob to Capella? Mm-hmm. If you watched any of the previous Hawks games during the regular season when Mitch was healthy, you see how much more difficult it was for Trey to make that decision.
Exactly.
Because Mitch covers a lot of ground, and it's no shade towards Noel because Noel isn't awful. Like I hope people don't think I think he's bad, because I think he's solid.
Some people have. I've seen on Twitter. Some people think.
I don't despise Noel. I actually think he's pretty solid. But when you compare him to Mitch, there's like a very, significant difference that I think would have changed the series. Maybe the Knicks don't win. I don't know. But I think Trey's life would have been a lot more difficult. And if you make Trey's life difficult, you make the Hawks' life more difficult.
Yeah, because there was passes he was making that were just unbelievable, and simply because he was just getting over the screen and there was no one in front of him. Everyone was behind him. Poor Taj, so many times on pick and rolls, was just getting blow past by. And then now you have to figure out, okay, do we attack Trey, or do we let him kick it out? And he got Bogey, Gallo, Hunter, Collins waiting on the wing, and it's like it was like pick your poison, And it was a tough situation for them. Where Mitch in there, he probably attacks it. He hedges those screens quick. And now Trey, everything's tougher for Trey. He's not making those weak side passes where he's throwing the bogey, and with ease. It's difficult. And that's what we had to do, is make Trey's life difficult. What we did in the regular season is just make things hard for him. Where in the postseason, it felt like he was just doing whatever he wanted. Exactly. So that was definitely tough with the loss of Mitch. Let's talk about Tibbs and the defense he brought in, because I think I don't know about you, but I went into the season thinking, okay, we don't have enough defensive pieces to be a good defense right away. What do you think he brought in that made this team, be, 1 or 2 in defense all year, and just play excellent without having any all NBA defenders on? That's the craziest part, is that there's maybe Mitch, if he was healthy, maybe he makes it, but that's maybe. No all NBA defenders. How did he get everyone to buy in and be one of the best defenses in the league against the 3, against, protecting the rim, top 5, I believe, protecting the rim? Like, how did he get everyone to buy in?
That's like the magic with Tibbs. He just gets dudes that don't defend. I mean, honestly, like 80% of defense is just effort. If you try and you're focused on that end, it's harder for opposing teams to score on you. Just caring is enough to have an impact. If you want to get into the X's and O's, they play drop for the most part. So for those of you who don't know what a drop defense is, it's just the center kind of sits back on screens in the paint. So you're kind of giving up like floaters for the most part, mid-range pull-ups, that kind of shot. Maybe even pull-up threes against a guy like Lillard, but they didn't. You can shift how far you drop your big. they tried different things against Trey, for example, and Trey's just like a pick and roll phenom, so he just does whatever he wants. Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's only so much you can do against a guy like
exactly.
Trey. But in the regular season, against teams, the drop defense is really good, and even in the playoffs, like if you want to know what a drop defense is, just watch the Jazz and watch Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, the king of that.
Yeah. You can kind of like funnel the ball handler into the paint and have him finish over like a 7-footer, for example. But another thing that the Knicks did really well was they like provided help, but from the nail. The nail is kind of like, if you think of the free throw line, like kind of the corner where people like to pull up from.
Mhm.
A lot of help at the nail. I always reference that whenever I do my videos. A lot of help at the nail. So when people drive, they're always seeing like another defender come over, and then they do a good job of stunting. So they'll come over, help at the nail, then get back to their man on the wing before giving up a three. So it was just a really active, fun defense that proved to give a lot of positive results for them this year.
Yeah, and like you said, defense is effort. It's what you put in. Like,
Yeah.
you don't need a whole bunch of all NBA defenders to have good defenses. Everyone just buys in to their role on defense. You're going to have success. And just Tibbs is just keeps pounding that in defense. It's and it's reason why they were, I think they finished second overall in defense and third in defensive efficiency. So.
Yeah.
But let's go to the offensive side where things, it was slow. Let's just say pace of play. They were dead last in pace of play and all that. What did you see from the offense why they didn't, maybe not play a little bit faster and all that?
I think it was strategy, honestly. When you're sort of a limited offensive team, because the Knicks weren't necessarily a bad offensive team, especially during April, they were actually like a top,
Yeah,
I can't remember the exact number, but they were like a top 10 offense for like a good 15, 20 games, which might not sound like much, but in a 72 game series that season, that's like a quarter, a fifth. I don't know. I suck at math, guys. So but
me too. I'm not that good either, so I can't even tell you if that's right or wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just pretend I'm right.
Yeah.
But their offense, they had flashes, but playing slow, what it does is it limits possessions in a game. So if you're playing against a team that has more talent than you offensively, and you just defend and on offense you just limit possessions and you ugly the game up, you muck it up, you just give Julius the ball, you make him make decisions. What you do is you give yourself a chance at the end of games. And if you give yourself a chance at the end of games, that's all you can really ask for, especially when you don't have the talent necessarily that maybe other teams do. So I think slowing down the pace was definitely like a mindful thing. I don't think it was like a case of like the Knicks don't have the personnel, because they do. We've seen Julius, RJ's really good in transition.
Yeah.
Derrick Rose, Obi would love to run some more.
Yes.
Even Mitch. We know how Mitch is one of the fastest probably bigs in the NBA. So I think it was definitely like a strategy thing. It wasn't like an accident.
Yeah, and I think that was something that you mentioned. We got a lot of athletes on these teams, and moving the ball, I thought playing faster was something I wanted them to see. And obviously there wasn't that guy available, right? Because it's easy to say like, all right, they got to play faster, but do they have a guy that's going to be able to do that? And they didn't, we saw how they handled free agency last year. They didn't really go after. They signed a bunch of 1-year deal guys, and then they brought back Elf. Obviously Elf for Payton is very he's in that like Chris Duhon, who else? Ramon Sessions of Knicks point guards that just Knicks fans just don't rock with. And we saw his ups and downs. I wouldn't kill him too much. He did some solid things, getting to the basket, but obviously that's not the point guard that would fit like like I said, we saw that with Toppin at Dayton where they would just transition everything, right? And I felt like in order for Toppin to be great, you got to be able to run. We just didn't have, and I felt that was a big reason why he struggled, because now we're asking him to create at the wing, and that's not his strength. To create off, get off the dribble and all that, where, he needs to be moving because he's an athlete. Get him in space, get him easy bucket. Same thing with Mitch and same thing with So obviously not having that point guard, I think, has hurt. So how do you feel, obviously, great season, 41 wins, 4th seed. obviously back in the playoffs, which is for the first time in 8 years since going to the second round against Indiana back in 2012. How do we assess this season? Do you look at it, as okay, this was just some luck? How do you assess this Knicks season? Because I feel like I'm still not confident. Not that I'm not confident, but still have some worries going into this season that, like, okay, yeah, we made the playoffs, but things can, the East is very good. It's stacked 1 through 10. How are you feeling about, the future for the New York Knicks?
I think you have to feel pretty good about it, just for the simple fact that, it was an unexpected season, and maybe a pessimist is more negative on the season and they're thinking, it was just luck, shortened season, teams were playing like every other day. There were no fans in the arena. You can be a pessimist about it if you want to. I personally wouldn't, just because I think there were real habits that were built. If you watch the season and you watch closely, you notice things like the defense. It always stuck. No matter when things struggled, the defense was there. That's a big thing. When things go bad, that's when you really learn like what your team is about, I guess. And I think we saw that the defense travels.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you want to like kind of lean into like what to expect for next season, and in the grand scheme of things, that last season was a franchise changing trajectory kind of season, because I think a lot of people were expecting another high draft pick, and then this was going to be the season where they make this kind
fade for Cade. I heard a lot. It was fade for Cade and all that. Everyone was ready for it.
Exactly. Yeah. People were expecting Cade Cunningham, and they got a playoff win instead.
And some people still want that. Like, I've seen that on Twitter where people were still like, "Oh, we lost in 5. What good was that? Why don't we just tank and try to get a top 5 pick?" And it's like, did you not enjoy watching competitive basketball and watching them get to the play? To me, like, the chance of getting a generational talent, that's cool, but we've seen how it's gone for the Knicks. It hasn't exactly gone, like, they've never finished above where they're projected in the lottery. Like, it's always been getting lower. If they're projected first pick, it's always getting the 3rd pick. And then it's like, well, there's 2 superstars, the potential stars, and we get the it's always been that way. So it's like, why do we want to go through, like, the Zion lottery? Like, once we didn't get that, it was like, okay, I'm done with this. We can't go. It's too stressful. And like, we complain about the media coming after the Knicks. Do we really want to go through another season of people attacking the Knicks and us, and then we just get, this was fun. Yeah, we lost in 5 and the things could have gone better, but this was a great experience to understand, okay, this is how you build. All right, this is how you build. And to get to that next level, you got to win. And that's
it's not like 2012.
Yeah.
It's not like 2012. Remember 2012, they had the 54 game win season, and you kind of knew that there was an old kind of very like aging.
That was a very old team. Yep. That was a very old team.
Yeah. Some of the most important players were like 36, 37, 38. But the difference is this season is all these guys are expected to grow. Like Randall, you can expect maybe his numbers dip a little bit just because now there's more talent on the team. Yeah. But you can expect his game to kind of, there's a different feeling when you're going into a season and you're already an all-NBA guy compared to when you're trying to beat that all-NBA guy. He's established himself now, I think. RJ, going into your 3rd season, you expect a pretty big jump. It's fair to think that he's going to keep developing. IQ gets another season. Obi gets another season. I think Obi getting a summer league and a training camp, especially after coming off that kind of really good Hawks series. I think he's one of the few Knicks that kind of showed some things during that series. So I think there's reason to expect some positive development. And you get a healthy Mitch back, which I think is huge. Healthy Mitch changes things. I'm going to keep harping on that. I want people to understand how good Mr. Robinson is.
Very important.
Exactly. So, if fans wanted to lose another year to just watching random guys that Alexei Shved's, he was fun though. He was fun. I'll give him that. But those kind of guys that we just kind of forget about. That's up to them. But I think as a fan, if you're a fan of a team, you should always kind of be rooting for them to win. But I'm not going to police how people like their team. So.
Yeah. I couldn't stand another year of trying to lose again. And once you hire Tibbs, you knew that wasn't going to be the case anyway. So you knew, they were going to buy it. And like you mentioned with guys like Obi and Quick, like especially like those guys did not have a regular training camp. All right, their college seasons, like especially for Obi. Obi was going to he was a national player of the year. His Dayton was going to be a number 1 seed, maybe number 1 overall. And that was going to be his moment to shine. And that got cut short. And then obviously, going through all the draft process was Zoom drafts. Everything was Zoom. You're not doing a lot of, workouts and all that. So for him, and quickly too, but especially for Obi, he was supposed to, everyone thought was NBA ready. A lot of things got cut short for him. And that's why I feel like he struggled early on. But this season, and like you said, did some things good late on the season. And in the playoffs even showed us something. We're like, okay, all right, this is the Obi that we expected, right? We saw some flashes from him on perimeter shooting and getting to the basket. But having a regular off-season, like a real off-season
to train,
to train, like to be on the schedule you would have been on last year. I think that's huge. He's going to have like I said, we're going into summer league. He's going to have a regular training camp. And like I said, I think it's going to benefit him a lot and quickly too. I'm very excited to see what those guys do a lot. So speaking, they were a part of last year's draft class. Let's talk about this year's draft class. So the Knicks made 4 selections. They took Quentin Grimes out of Houston with their 25th pick. They traded down. They took Rokas Jokubaitis from Lithuania. Deuce McBride, who I can't believe dropped to the second round. That was an absolute steal for them at 36. And then with the 58th pick, they took Jericho Sims out of Texas. How did you feel about the Knicks draft this season?
I think it's a quality draft. I think they drafted some guys that should be contributors. Maybe not this season, just because there's so much talent on the team now. But in a couple years, next season, or even in spot minutes, I think they drafted some guys that can play. I think one of the bigger things that happened during the draft was all the trading back. It's kind of frustrating, I'm sure, for many people to watch that live because you want to see somebody get picked 19.
Yeah. I was on Knicks Fan TV and I'm on the air and we're all like, all right, Nick 19th pick. And we're like, don't look at Twitter. And then oh, they traded down. I was like, all right, they traded down. We got the 21st pick. And then they traded down again. I was like, oh, come on. We want it. What's the pick? Make a pick. Oh, yeah. I could get people a lot of frustrated with that, I guess.
Yeah, but in the end, they drafted 4 guys that I think can be good NBA players, along with adding some more assets for the future. So, I mean, in the moment, it was probably a little boring and a little frustrating. Yes. But in the long run, in a couple years, when they have an extra pick to make or an extra pick to trade for a star or whoever, I think it's gonna prove that it was worth it. But if you want to talk more specifically about these guys, I really liked kind of all of them individually. I watched about 10 full games of each player. I did these threads on them. I really like Quentin Grimes. They drafted him in the first round. Kind of your prototypical 3-and-D guy, but I think he does have some upside with the ball in his hands. Mm-hmm. Nothing too crazy because he's not really he's not a great passer and he doesn't get to the rim, but his jumper is gorgeous. I love his jumper. It's very, very nice to look at. He needs to improve his handle a little bit, I think, if he wants to take that kind of next level, because he does have some pretty decent handle, but he does lose it sometimes. He showed flashes of being able to create his own shot. He likes to attack his defenders with pull-up jumpers. That's one thing that the Knicks front office, I think, really values is pull-up shooting, because him and McBride are both pretty good pull-up shooters. They don't really get to the rim, but they pull up a lot. And then last year they drafted Quickly, who's a good pull-up shooter. Mm-hmm. And even the 2 guys they signed this offseason, Kemba Walker, Evan Fournier, and Alec Burks too as well, if you want to consider him. But they really value pull-up shooting, and I think they got that. And they also got guys who defend. So I think Grimes specifically, right now he's probably more of a 2-guard defensively at least. I don't think he can guard threes, especially the bigger threes. He can probably get away with some small forwards. But I think eventually he'll be able to do both. He has some pretty good defensive acumen. I like McBride. I thought, him dropping to 36 was surprising because I'm not a big draft guy, but just I kind of read up on some guys and McBride was kind of projected to go late first round, probably even around the Knicks at 21.
If they would have taken at 21, I wouldn't have been mad at all because he was a top 25 guy for me. So if they took him at 19 or 21, I would have been absolutely thrilled. And they got him at 30. 36.
It's
crazy. They got so much value.
He's fun to watch though. I like McBride. He gets after it on the defensive end.
Yes.
Yes.
The against Cade, when they were playing
Oh,
Oklahoma
yeah.
State, and then the Big 12 period, because the Big 12 was an absolute juggernaut this year. There was so many great teams, but especially against Oak State, he did his thing against Cade, and that's what really showed out for me watching him so much in the regular season. Was like, wow, I mean, he's really giving it to the potential, the number one pick in the draft. Like he's giving them tough times, Cade. So that's what me stood out was the defense, just being a pit bull.
He has some like dog in him. Like you could tell he really wanted to get after as the number one pick. You could tell
Tips
he
guy.
took it
He's
personal.
a tips guy. He's a tips guy. Of course.
And you see all the Knicks players refer to like, oh, he's a dog. He's a dog. They're gonna say the same thing about McBride because he's definitely a dog. But he has a really good frame, like defensively. Like he's a big body. Yeah. It's kind of a football player, kind of, but he really bodies guys up. He gets good contests. He has a good wingspan, I believe. So he gets really good contests on guys. I think he'll be able to defend multiple positions. Like definitely guards. Maybe some threes, but I don't think he'll ever look out of place on that end.
No,
and
definitely not.
Offensively, I mentioned the pull-up jumper. He doesn't, again, like Grimes, they don't really attack the basket much. But he does post up guys, which I think helps because he can post up smaller guys. If you watch the playoffs this year, and the Bucks won the chip, Drew Holiday likes to post up smaller guys. There's a lot of value.
Yep.
Exactly. There's value in a point guard that can post up smaller guys, especially. Think of how valuable that would have been against a guy like Trey, even though Trey doesn't really guard point guards. You get the idea. Yeah.
But I've seen comps to Drew Holiday with McBride too, like that he has a little bit of Drew Holiday in him as far as like you said, posting up and his defensive and like how he uses his hands the way Drew does. Like Drew he's just sticking in there and just grabbing it. It don't matter who it is, he's just getting in there. Like CP3, we saw that in the championship. He's just sticking in CP3 and making it difficult. And I think you see that a lot with McBride, what he did to Cade and all that, like just getting his hands inside and being physical with just his hands. Like it, and it's to me, I see some Drew in that with as far as with McBride.
Yeah, and Jericho Sims, I don't think there's anybody higher on him than me. I was watching his film and I was like kind of blown away. I'm not surprised he dropped that far because he's a 4-year guy. People don't like 4-year guys. It's like a NBA turnoff now.
It's a sin. It's a sin if you take a 4-year guy.
How dare he get a degree? But
how dare he want to go to school for 4 years and get his bachelor's degree? How dare he? It's like it's crazy.
But really athletic, obviously runs the floor really well. Jumps out the gym. Everybody knows that. But why I'm really high on him is I was watching him defensively and bigs don't move like that. Switchable guards 1 through 5. Like I won't say he guards 1 through 5, but you can put him on a guard for a possession, and he'll make it tough on him. It won't look easy. He moves incredibly well. Turns his hips well. I'm like I said, I'm probably higher on him than anyone else in the world right now.
He's and what's crazy because Texas felt like had the most size in college basketball.
Yeah,
and that's why I was high on them going into this year. With Greg Brown and Kai Jones, I felt like with the Knicks because the Knicks originally took Kai Jones with the 19th pick in the trade with Charlotte, and I'm like, then when the draft going on, I was like, they got Jericho. That to me, that's way better value than taking Kai, who's yes, he's a physical freak too, but there's still is very raw. Where Jericho, we know what he's going to be. We know what he's going to do. Everything's going to be around the rim because that's where everything was for him.
Yeah.
Everything's around the rim. And there's maybe a little bit upside because we didn't see, like you said, there was so many bigs at Texas that, they took away from each other that there might be some untapped potential with him as far as, with Jericho. So to me, I thought that was just absolute tremendous value for them to get him at 58. Like, is he that far off from Kai Jones, who was taken at 19? Like, I don't think there's that big. I mean, you would think there's a big gap because but I'm like, it's closer to me than we think, in my opinion.
I don't know enough about Kai Jones. I mean, I did see him while I was watching the Sims tape, so I can't really speak on that. But I do know that I'm like Sims moves really well. Like bigs that move that well, they have value. They can stick around in the NBA. I think he's probably gonna end up on a 2-way deal.
Yeah, most likely.
So some G League time would probably be good for him. But the one thing I noticed about him that I didn't see too many people talk about, and I clipped some of it, is the way he can kind of dribble, which is interesting, which I'm not saying he's going to be Jokic. I'm not saying that. But the fact that he can put the ball on the floor is very intriguing. It shows that he has some ball skill and he's comfortable with the ball in his hands. So that was just a little something that I noticed. I don't know if you want to talk about Rokas. I watched Rokas tape.
Yes.
Yes,
I
I like
like
Rokas.
Rokas. A lot of people were like, why did they take a draft and stash guy? I was like, he could hoop. He's a crafty lefty. Like he could do some
Yeah.
things. I know he's not going to make an immediate impact because he's probably going to, not be here for maybe another year. He's going to be in the summer league, but maybe not on the main roster. But I thought that was a very solid. To me, he was a top 40 guy. So to me, taking him at 34 was not. I had no issue with that.
Yeah, he's gonna take a year or two to really, I think, contribute like at the NBA level. But he's a fun guy. He's a pick and roll point guard. Likes to come off the screen.
Yep.
Imagine him throwing lobs to Mitch or hitting Randall if they ever let him set screens on the roll. But he makes some really nice passes. He likes to get to the basket. He's a pretty good finisher, kind of like Dragic. Like, not saying he's going to be as good as Dragic, but the types of finishes, craftiness, he just gets around the basket pretty well. Knows how to find the gaps in defense. Defensively, though, he's not the greatest defender, but he's also not the worst. Kind of categorize him around average, I guess. He needs to mature a little bit, like his game, not him. I don't know his personally, but he needs to mature his body a little bit.
Of course.
I like his game though. He's probably a couple years away, but I mean, people don't like drafts and stash picks because they're kind of boring as well because you got to wait a couple years for them to come in. But they weren't going to bring in 4 rookies. Maybe they do, but they weren't going to bring in 4 fresh new rookies to a Tibbs team that just made the playoffs. So it's not they had to draft and stash at least one guy. I'm surprised they didn't do 2, to be honest. But
yeah, and I wasn't as, a lot of people were just like, oh, what a wasted pick and all that. And it's like, like you just said, you're not bringing in 4 rookies at one time. Why not take a chance on a guy and see, let him, put him away overseas, and we'll see what happens in a year or two. Like I said, we're going to see some of him in summer league, so we're going to get a little glimpse of him to see, how he is, working with the guys we have now. So. Is there anyone on the summer league roster other than the 4 that you're interested in?
Other than Obi, I'm really interested to see some more Obi. I think his confidence levels went up. I'm very interested to see what that looks like on a stage where he should kind of dominate athletically and even skill wise. It's his first full off season. I think he needed that because. If you just look at Obi, I think coming to the NBA was the first time in his life that he probably wasn't the most athletic guy on the floor at all times. And I think that's a pretty big adjustment because his best skill is probably his athleticism. Exactly. So for you to go somewhere and you just drop him in the NBA, and he's had no run against NBA guys, and I think it was kind of like a little bit of a culture shock. I don't know if culture shock is the right word, but caught him off guard. And I think now he should show out a little bit. Excited to see Quickly again, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
Other than that, there's no one that I'm paying too close of an eye to. Luka. I don't know too much about Luka. He's probably the one guy on the Knicks I don't know too much about. But he seems intriguing. His roster spot is kind of becoming a little bit of a controversy on the team right now.
Yeah. It's up in the air right now, because it's a crowded backcourt now.
Yeah, so he's gonna have to show out. I'm excited to watch him though. I need to see some more Luka. I'm probably gonna watch some more tape on him too. But I'm excited to see some Luka as well.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to and the Knicks Summer League starts Sunday, 4 p.m.
4:30, I believe.
4:30, yeah. So interested to see, how they go. All right, so let's talk about free agency. So obviously the draft people, had their, mixed feelings about it. It wasn't sexy, but to me it was solid. They got the pieces they got. But free agency, obviously, they had the most cap going into free agency, and they come away with some solid pieces. They re-signed Burks, 3 years, 30. Nerlens, I know you're not crazy about the Nerlens deal, so I want to get into that. 3 years, 32. D Rose coming back at 3 for 43. Taj coming back at a 1-year deal. Randall re-signing 4 years, 117. So he gets his extension. Then adding Evan Fournier 4 years for $78 million, and then Kemba Walker got waived by Oklahoma City and will likely sign either a 1 for 8 or 2 for 16, maybe the second year being a player option, which most of these guys, their last year of their deals will be a team option. So some solid deals, I know, like we talk about the draft, people it wasn't sexy. But I think people thought the Knicks were gonna, there weren't a lot of big time free agents too. So like I didn't know the expectancy of certain fans, like what they were expecting to get, because there wasn't a lot of big time free agents available. I mean, other than Kawhi, but we know Kawhi just waits it out for everything, and he was going to re-sign. So, and in trades, we don't know what's going to happen, and stuff still can happen on the trade market, but nothing happened. So, give me your overall take on the Knicks free agency.
I think you couldn't expect much better. Going in, like you mentioned, the free agent crop wasn't the greatest. All the good free agents didn't seem to be realistic. Chris Paul, there were some rumors, but I think we all kind of expected him to resign. There's no way the Suns are going to let him go after a finals run.
Of course not,
Yeah. Who else is there? Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry kind of wants to compete at this stage. While the Knicks are competitive, they're not championship level yet. And even adding Kyle Lowry doesn't make them championship contenders. But him going to the Heat puts their name in the convo, even if they're not favorites. So even Kawhi, you mentioned Kawhi. Kawhi wasn't really going anywhere expected to. But overall, they improved the team while maintaining kind of the bigger parts of what made last season successful. The only key loss they suffered was Reggie Bullock, but I think they upgraded that position with Fournier, because while maybe it's a downgrade defensively, the kind of shot variation that Fournier provides that Bullock doesn't is probably more valuable than Bullock's defense, because Bullock wasn't an elite defender by any means. He was a solid, good team defender.
Yeah, solid,
yeah. But that Fournier upgrade, that was big. I thought that was big because they needed someone else who can also kind of. Fournier isn't just a shooter. He can kind of create a little bit. He can run a pick and roll. He can pass a little bit. He averages like 3 assists last season, I believe.
Get to the basket too. He's good.
Yeah, he gets to the basket. Exactly. He has some bounce, some juice off the bounce. So I think that was a good signing, and I think people were kind of waiting around, like, who's the point guard? Who are they going to sign at point? And then we were all kind of waiting for like a Reggie Jackson campaign, one of those kind of guys. Or people were like nervous about Schroeder because Schroeder still isn't on the team. And Dinwiddie. And then out of nowhere, I woke up and I just see Kemba to the Knicks. And it was like, that's a really freaking good move, because it's a move. And I think people kind of even forgot that was like a thing that Kemba could get bought out. I think for me personally, I thought it was going to happen at the deadline. I thought that he would like try to build up his value and then try to trade him and get like another pick for him. OKC loves their picks. So I thought
they got too many picks. It's like, all right, guys, like, come on now. We get it. You're hoarding now. Like, come on, like
share some for the league. But the Kemba signing, I think it kind of like wrapped the bow on the offseason, because I tweeted this as well. But the Kemba signing was huge because they improved the 2 weakest positions in the starting lineup. They improved Bullock for Fournier and Kemba for Payton. And they were able to keep that bench unit, that 5, which is Rose, Burks, IQ, Obi, and Noel. And Taj as well. Let me mention Taj, because Taj is really good. I think we can argue about this, but I think Taj is better than Noel. People are not gonna like that one. People are not gonna like that one. But.
Ariel coming with
and
this gonna sound like the anti.
People not gonna like that one, but
no. Hey, I love Taj. I love Taj.
I love Taj.
Taj is OG.
Exactly. But if you want to get into the contracts, I like the Fournier deal. Just to kind of do an overarching comment, I guess the team options at the end of the things, at the end of the contracts, are very valuable because they allow you to trade them much easier.
Teams
can have so if you want to trade a Fournier at the end, 2 years in, the team that trades for him has the option of like, okay, this is either a 1-year deal if I want him, or it can be a 2-year deal if I want to keep him. So it's up to the team. It's very valuable to have that kind of option.
Yep. I think that's what people. I think that's what people were freaking out about at first, because
me included.
Because originally, obviously, do you say 3-year deal? You're like, okay, is it guaranteed 3 years or is it 2 + 1? Because if it's 2 + 1, you're like, okay, all right, that's better. But if it's fully 3, you're like, okay, that's I don't know about that. But once we heard that it was essentially everyone's on a on a team option for, some guys had 3 years, the 3rd year, and then Fournier is the 4th year is team option. You felt little better about those deals.
Exactly. And I think, for example, we can talk about the Noel deal now.
All right.
I don't think the Noel contract. Listen. I do not think the Noel contract is the worst contract to ever be signed or anything like that. I think he's a good player. I think he's probably worth more closer to like 5-6 mil ish. 10 mil is not some crazy overpay. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
I will say though, one thing that I forgot who brought it up, so I'm sorry I can't credit you, but someone mentioned that there's value in kind of bringing your own guys back because they already know what to do. So, and you kind of want to give guys that were on your team and part of that success, you kind of want to reward them for that. It kind of looks good around the league. Like, oh, if I play well on the Knicks.
Continuity is important too, like that, because this Knicks roster has been different. I mean, Ariel, it feels like the last 8 years the rosters is an overhaul every single year. So bringing back, Noel maybe got a little bit more than we expected, but at least bringing back our guys, at least knows we have some continuity going to next year. And chemistry is huge in the league.
Exactly. Yeah. Chemistry is something you can't really quantify it, but you know when it's there. And bringing back Noel, it's not the end of the world. I like him. I do like him as a player. I don't want to like make it seem like he's awful.
Ariel does like Nerlens Noel. Sorry,
I like Nerlens Noel.
Not fully anti Nerlens.
Exactly. Yeah. I just thought Todd can do like kind of similar things for much cheaper price.
But
I thought there was some.
But Nerlens got overrated at times because, like you mentioned before, we underrated Mitch this year when he was out because we were like, oh, Nerlens can do what he does and maybe cheaper. But it's like we saw that, okay, he can't do everything Mitch can do. There's certain things. Yeah. So we overrated. I saw a lot of people were like, oh, Nerlens should bring back Nerlens to start a trade Mitch. And I was like, whoa. It's easy. Like Nerlens played his role perfectly, but we mentioned the playoffs before. He kind of got showed out. Like he kind of got, we saw why he's what he is as a player, right? And also the injury concerns. He's the durability issues is another thing.
The main reason why I'm like kind of down on the signing, like I'm not terribly down on it, but the reason why I was a little down on it is because the playoffs. The thing about the playoffs is they expose your weaknesses, and the thing with Noel is that kind of being a nothing on offense, like providing no spacing, not being a good finisher around the rim. Not a good offensive rebound. If you were a good offensive rebounder, that'd help a lot. But he's not a good on that. But I just think having kind of that limited of a guy kind of hurts you a little bit. It's not the end of the world. He should be better. I don't want to beat on him too much for one playoff series. That's kind of not fair to him. I kind of want to see him again before I like make a judgment that he's like unplayable in the playoffs or anything like that. But I think a guy like Todd could have filled that role and maybe even eventually Sims, but that's kind of a stretch. I don't like to put too much pressure on rookies. It takes a while for people,
especially bigs, especially rookie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, in terms of that, not the worst contract in the world. The Burks deal, I think that's one that's probably going to get traded in a year or two. I think because they got Grimes, they got McBride, they got some guards that they're probably going to want to play at some point. I don't think Burks is going to finish his contract here, but I think it's a very easily tradable contract.
Easy. Who wouldn't want a bucket getter at $10 million a year come off the bench? No,
exactly. He can shoot. He can create a little bit. He's solid for 10 mil. It's a good contract. The Fournier deal, I'm a fan of. 19 mil, I think it is a year. For Fournier, 3 years plus 1. Good deal. Good value. That he's worth that. Maybe a little bit more. Great deal. No problems with that one. I think I'm missing someone. The Kemba deal, I mean, that's a home run. You get a former All-Star for either $8 million a year or 2 for 16, whatever it is. Either way, it's still great value. There's some upside on that. And, a lot of people were saying like, oh, why are people so hype about getting Kemba Walker? People were just kind of, putting him down last year or whatever. There's a difference when you have Kemba Walker making 30 whatever mil.
Exactly.
And when he's making $8 million a year, the kind of value he brings is different.
Exactly, yeah. Somebody mentioned that on Twitter, had tweeted that, and they're like, oh, but you said that Kemba wasn't. And I was like, no. I said Kemba at the money he was making, $30 million is not good for us to get. But Kemba at $8 million is a home run. Because even if
there's no team in the NBA that wouldn't take him for
exactly. And he was still solid. Yes, and we all know that the knee issues is worrisome.
Yeah.
But even if it doesn't work out, it doesn't cost us much. So to me, the value is just, it's worth it. And then if you get anything from him, if you get 16 and 6 or whatever, that's worth more than $8 million.
That's worth way more than $8 million. Yeah. You don't find point guards for that.
No, we just had Elf for $7 million, and look what we got. So we get a guy for $1 million more, and is a way better player than Elf. and it's gonna help value get shot creation. There's just so much value in that, and we know what Kemba can do on the big stages when healthy. So to me, it was great. All right, I want to talk about Julius Randle extension. He got 4 years, $117. Obviously, he could have declined that and got $200 million next year. So he took it. But and I mentioned this a lot to a lot of people because people are like, oh, why did he take the extension now? Why didn't he wait to get 200? It's like, we've seen this. We just saw Dennis Schroeder turn down 4 for 84, and now he's struggling to find a team that, he might have to sign a 1-year deal. We've seen it with DeMarcus Cousins. We've seen it with IT. We've seen it with a lot of guys. So I'm not mad at him for taking what he can get because there's no guarantee that that's going to be there next year because there's so many factors that can happen. God forbid injury. His play. He played at such a high level. People are still skeptical. Well, is he that player still? Yeah. So for Randall, obviously, struggled in the playoffs, but it was more than just him struggling. He was literally just there. Everyone knew that you had to stop Julius Randle because we didn't have anyone that could. To stop the Knicks, you have to stop Julius Randle. So I think people focus like, oh, he had a terrible playoffs. Well, we have, like you mentioned, you do your videos. There's so much more to it than just
context.
There's context to it. Like people are just gonna look, and I could just run off the numbers. Like he shot 45% in the regular season. It dropped to 29 in the playoffs. His turnovers were up. Went for 24 a game to 18 a game. But like you mentioned, context is king. You have to understand the context, and he was just absolutely just double team, triple everything because they knew if they stop him, they're gonna win. There was no one else you could trust. RJ's still not there where he can create off the dribble and create his own shot. So, what do you feel about the deal to re-sign Randall and how good of a value? Because to me, it's tremendous value.
Tremendous value, 100%. I think you can get an All-NBA guy at that price. It's kind of incredible. A second-team All-NBA guy at that price. I tweeted this as well, but if you just look at the contracts of every guy that made All-NBA this year, and you look at Julius's, it's an absolute steal. He's the only guy making under 30 mil.
Yeah, this guy's making $50 million a year like now.
Exactly.
Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you can't complain about this deal. Even if you're not a Julius guy, you got to admit that getting him on 29 mil a year is a steal. But I think it's good insurance kind of for both sides because even though Julius showed out last year and did better than anyone expected, there is a little bit of like wary of like maybe he might drop off a little bit. Yep. Maybe, you know what I'm saying? It's just a cautious thing where like he gets his money. He gets his 117 mil is still a lot of money, especially for a guy who's never got a big contract. Still a lot of money for 100 to get 117.
And he got this year guaranteed. And because remember, only $4 million was guaranteed going into this season. So now he gets that's 19. So that's an extra 15 million.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to add that if you want to think about it that way too.
Exactly. So he has his guaranteed money no matter what happens to him for the rest of his next 4 years it is. And from the Knicks side of it, it's like what it allows for them to do now that they have him on the contract for that price is flexibility. That's the biggest thing. I think that was the biggest takeaway from the offseason in general. When you look at things, it's just flexibility. You look at the draft, they added more draft picks for the future to improve their flexibility to make trades and to really improve the roster after they make those trades. And then you look at free agency, the contracts they sign, the team options at the end of every deal. What that does is provide more flexibility. The Knicks are... People want the Knicks to sign a star, and the Knicks are star chasing, but they aren't doing it how they used to do, where they went all out for free agency and they just saved up 50 mil and hoped 2 guys would come. Like they're building a foundation where a free agent or a possible trade target, Lillard, for example. I know this seems unlikely, but Lillard, for example, let's just use his name. If Lillard wakes up tomorrow and he's like, I want to be a Knick, the Knicks have the assets to make that deal, and if they don't overpay, they should have a pretty good team for Lillard to come into. Lillard might cost too much, so it's probably not the best example. But the point is that they're building a foundation for star players to want to come to. Just it's kind of similar to what the Nets were doing.
I was just about to say that. Very similar.
Yeah. Similar to what the Nets did. Except the Knicks have an all-star that they have on the contract. The Nets had D'Lo, but he was up for free agency, and they didn't re-sign him because they got Kyrie and whatever, and KD. But just overall, I think that was the main theme of the offseason is flexibility. Everything they did no contract they signed, nothing, no trade they made, nothing they did. hampered their flexibility for the future.
Yeah, I agree. And just building that foundation is so important. If you want to get those free agents, right, do you have to do the opposite of what they did in 19, where they just tanked, clearly tanked, didn't show them roster improvements, and just said, well, we got cap space and we're in New York. That's our pitch. And it's like, well,
I don't know.
That's not working in today's basketball no more.
Exactly.
Like, you can't pitch New York City anymore. Like, because let's face it, Giannis is making money all the way in Milwaukee, games in Portland. Like, those are big time names. They don't care about it. You have to show that you have stability. And that's what the Knicks are showing. They started that with last season to just build that. And then this year, again, building another step. So when you go into next season, now you're like, okay, guys, look at back-to-back seasons. We made the playoffs. Let's say we make the playoffs again. You know, we're building foundation. The young guys are getting better. This is what we have for you. You know, if they want to add either trade guy or a free agent, they have a legit blueprint to show people like, okay, it's not just New York City and cap space, which has been the last whatever free agencies is what their pitch was. Now it's okay. We have flexibility with the roster. We got picks. We got all this stuff. We got a good roster, good front office that you can trust. And then you can be like, yeah, and we're in New York City. And if you win with this, if you win with us, you're a king.
Exactly.
You're king forever. So then I think these last 2 off seasons are going to show what they can do and trust free agents and guys who they're trying to trade for and to believe that this is officially going in the right direction.
And what I do want to say too is not only were they flexible about how they went about things, but they took care of their guys. You know, the guys that contributed last year. That matters in the NBA. Teams, free agents and players and agents notice that kind of thing where, like, if I come to New York, or if my player comes to New York and he performs well, they will be taken care of. Mm-hmm. That can be the difference that separates a guy taking 16 mil in New York and 19 mil in, like, I don't know, Houston, random team. But, you know, taking care of your guys, bringing back your guys, that's continuity, maintaining flexibility. That it was just a really good offseason overall. I don't think you can really complain. There's nothing that they did that seems like they took a risk here. Like, everything seemed calculated. They went in with a plan, it seems like, and they executed it really well. Yeah.
I think they absolutely had it. And the Kemba thing to me was the bow on top, right? It was like, okay, it was like, okay, everybody was stressing about the point guard. And I was a little bit too, because I'm like, okay, what are they doing? Like, they're not going to obviously run the young guys. And I'm like, people are like, well, quickly going to start the point. I was like, quickly, I don't think he's the point. He's more of like an off-ball guard. Like, I don't think he's, our lead guard, right now. He could maybe develop into that, with his playmaking if he improves. But I was like, and then they hit the Kemba. I was like, okay, now this I really like it. And I'm really looking forward to this. And like I said, they brought back their guys. They could have signed a whole bunch of other guys and all that, but now you're messing with the chemistry. Why not just bring back your guys and all that? So to me, that made a lot of sense and all that. So I got a few more things for you, Ariel, before we sign off, man. I appreciate your time with me. This has been dope, talking all things Knicks. We just talked about free agency, the draft, and all that. As we go into this next season, give me your strengths and weaknesses for this Knicks team going into the 2021-22 season.
If there's one thing I'm probably a little bit concerned about, it might be the perimeter defense. They took a little bit of a step back losing Bullock and adding Fournier. Yes. Kemba's a little small. He tries on defense. He's not a bad defender, but when you're that small at the NBA level, that there's something that other teams have that they can take advantage of you just because you're smaller than most of the other guys on the floor. So I'm a little concerned about their perimeter defense. I think RJ has to I think he's a good defender, don't get me wrong, but I think he's gonna have to be the guy that takes the assignment now at this from the start of games. So that's something that'll be interesting to watch. I think he can handle it. I don't think it's a problem, but that's kind of like a fun little storyline I'm excited to look out for the season. In terms of their strength, their bench, that bench is, I think, is pretty deep.
Their bench is better than some of the starting lineups we've seen the Knicks roll out the last few years.
Exactly. Yeah. The starting lineup now would be like the 2017 starting lineup in a best of 7.
Exactly. Yeah, easy sweep me. They might have sweep them.
Exactly. But It's a good lineup. It's a good bench unit. And like we keep mentioning, the continuity of it. They already know how to play with each other. There won't be any like, okay, let's see if they learn how to figure it out. Derrick Rose is back. Burks. There's a lot of shot creation on this team now, which I think was something that they really needed, especially in the playoffs, because you saw how teams just zeroed in. I mean, the Hawks just zeroed in on Julius, and there was nobody else that could really create besides like D Rose and a little bit of Alec Burks, but Alec Burks is kind of inconsistent and not the guy you kind of want creating offense all the time. But yeah, you know, adding in Kemba, Fournier adds in some shot creation. Kemba adds in some shot creation. D Rose has shot creation. Hopefully, RJ Barrett takes a leap. IQ has some shot creation ability. Alec Burks does. So there's a lot of guys that can get a bucket if you need it, which is valuable, especially in the playoffs. Other than that, some of the strengths, the big lineup, the big rotation, seems like it'll be kind of fun. Now that Mitch is back, it's basically the same big unit from last season, but with a healthy Mitch, I think that changes a lot of things. I'm curious to see what the end of the bottom of the roster ends up looking like. Does Sims get on a two-way? Does he make the actual team? Maybe some guy in summer league that we're not even talking about shows out and he becomes someone that can contribute. But just in general, I think there's a lot to be excited for. I think this team kind of has like a second round kind of ceiling. I don't know if I want to get into that. Kind of has like a second round ceiling, I'd say, especially with Kemba now that he can kind of a proven playoff guy. And people like to criticize Kemba like because he kind of gets taken advantage of and he has some poor playoff performances in the playoffs past couple of years. But those were sort of later in the playoffs, like conference finals. That's when he kind of struggles. But in the first two rounds, he's been mostly fine. So I'm not really concerned about that. And yeah, overall, I think this should be a team that plays really well around Julius as well. Kemba can certainly play with Julius. Fournier, it's easy to see that he can play with just about anyone. So should be a fun team that mixes really well, even with the new guys, while mixing in the old guys. So we'll see. I think there will be a little bit of a drop-off with the defense. I wouldn't be shocked if there isn't, but I think it's fair to expect one just because they lost.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, there's a hit to their perimeter defense. So that's like my one little small concern.
Yeah, definitely going to be. All right, so let's take some Twitter questions before we sign off. All right, so the first one is from Triple M. You know, my guy Mario.
My guy.
Yep. You know, part of Off the Ball Network. Knicks fan, wild #1. You know, they have a dope show. All right, so this is a two-parter. Let's see. While doing your breakdowns, what is one player that surprised you with his skills and you were unaware or surprised that player had? And also, how does he know what? How do you know what specific clips to go through when highlighting a skill like shooting or defense or processing it?
Man, that's a tough question, man. I guess the one guy that I guess really surprised me, I'm gonna say Mitch. A lot of Mitch love today, but yeah, a lot of Mitch love. Sorry, guys. But I think I knew he was good. Don't get me wrong. I knew he was good coming in and like, but when you rewatch it and you really notice the little things like. Just positioning, for example, you really notice like he's always in the right spot for the most part. And you kind of notice these plays where like he's guarding 3-4 guys and he's running around the perimeter and he contests the shot at the 3-point line and he still ends up with the rebound and you're just like, how the hell did he just do all that?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yep.
And I'll cheat and give two answers. Another guy that I think impressed me too was quickly, I guess the rookies. Obi impressed me towards the end of the season. But even when Obi was kind of down and struggling, he was always in the right spots. You know, maybe he got picked on defensively a little bit because you know he's kind of slow-footed. But he's a better defender than I think he gets credit for. Like
yes,
being in the right spot. I said that effort is like 80% of it. Being in the right spot is like 90% of it if you add those two together. So I was a little impressed with that. And then quickly, I was impressed with defensively as well because he's kind of skinny. I think he bulked up a little bit based off the pictures I've seen of him. But he was a skinny guy last year, but he battled in the paint against bigger dudes whenever he's switched on. Yeah. And he's a switchable guy that likes to, not a switchable guy, but he's smart. Like if you put him on a bigger guy, he can hold his own. And I think he has a pretty underrated wingspan. So he can contest bigger dudes. So those are a couple of guys that like really impressed me for the most part.
He plays the passing lanes good too, quickly.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
We saw that a lot on Team U.
What was the second part of the question?
I don't recall. I think I switched away from it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
My bad, Mari.
All good, Mario. We'll go to the last one before we go off. All right. So this is Urson. Urson asks, yep, another great. He breaks down a lot of good stuff too, Urson.
Yeah.
Do you feel Obi is treated unfairly during his rookie season? The public opinion makes it look like he didn't live up to him being, NBA ready. However, according to the stats, he was top 10 defensively, top 10 in field goal percentage defensively, in the league. So, we talked about that before with Obi, and we just mentioned it about his defense. And I thought people harped on that a lot in the pre-draft process with but like you said, it's all about being in the right spot in the right time. But obviously we didn't think he was going to be Ron Artest defensively, but I think his defense, like people were going crazy a little bit too much in the pre-draft process.
Yeah, he's playable, which I think that's what you kind of hoped for him. As far as his public opinion, I think people were really tough on him in like February when he couldn't hit a shot. I think it was February.
Call him a bust already. Like, come on, people. Like half the season.
Yeah, man. And like another thing I think people didn't really take into account, it's tough to just come in and get like 8 minutes a game, 10 minutes a game, 12 minutes a game, like max, because the guy who plays your spot was having all NBA season.
Exactly, man. No real off season. Like you said, he relies on transition. We didn't have that type of player. We didn't play that type of offense. Exactly. So there was so many factors on why, but he picked it up towards the end. Like you said, the defense to me was the biggest thing I saw from him. Obviously he looked more confident on offense, but the defense, he wasn't getting. Everyone was, he's gonna get blown past by. I didn't see that, especially in the Atlanta series. Like he held his own.
He contested shots. Gallo kind of tried to pick on him a bunch of times, and he would be there. There's a couple of times he slips up and he's like a step slow. Yeah. But I think those are small things that you can improve upon. He's never gonna be able to be like a great pick and roll defender or like be able to switch on guards. Nobody's expecting that. But he's playable and he's passable. Like you can live with him being on the floor without it being like this incredibly damaging thing to your defense. So overall, I think public opinion was a little tough on him. I think the reason why it was is because he was such a high draft pick, and people were expecting him. If you remember, like in November when he was drafted, people were expecting him to be the starting power forward and Julius to be on his way out. Exactly. And then to see Julius doing well and then Obi doing like to struggle a little bit, I can see why the public opinion was what it was. But I do think people were kind of tough on him for a little bit there.
I also think Knox and Ntilikina not working out. Also, like people were like PTSD. another one, like another top 10 pick not working out. Like it feels like PTSD. The Knicks are always good at the first round pick or the second round pick. They always figure out, but they can't figure out the top 10. So I think people were like we thought, because most people heard like, hey, he's NBA ready. He's gonna come in. He's gonna be the starter, and then Randall's gonna be gone. Like, and he didn't. He struggled. Let's face it. If you want to put it as a total, the totality of the season, he struggled overall. So like it was like we have Knox on the bench. Frank's not playing. Like we just another first round top 10 pick. Like, and those things, and that's I think another thing is what made this Knicks turnaround even impressive is like when you miss on top 10 picks, that can it's hard to come back from that. 100%. And we've missed on. Look, Frank didn't get his qualifying. He's a free agent. Yeah. Kevin Knox. We thought he was going to see him in summer league. He's, obviously the COVID stuff happened. Yeah, he's still we don't even know if he's going to be on the roster this season. So when you miss on top 10 picks, that can absolutely gut your franchise. And that's what's made it impressive that the Knicks, even with that, those two top 10 picks not working out, and maybe Obi, we still have to see what Obi, potentially maybe three guys not working out and still being able to put your team in position, to me, is what's made this even impressive, because the Knicks of old may have not, recovered from this, but Leon and company have definitely filled in the spots and, overcome the previous Knicks regimes, mess ups and all that. So it's definitely impressive.
Another thing worth mentioning real fast is just that the Knicks had that season, the one that just ended. They had this season playing two rookies minutes. A lot of teams that made the playoffs aren't playing two rookies, and
no,
they kind of have big roles. Maybe quickly more than Obi, but they were expected. They weren't expected to really. Well, Obi was, but IQ, for example, wasn't really expected to have this kind of impact right away. So I think that was impressive to get the 4th seed, having two rookies playing minutes, have them in a playoff series, win a game, and and not look lost or out of place. That's a big deal. So I think that bodes well for both of their futures.
Yep, it definitely does, and it's definitely looking forward to next season. Like we said, with the young guys playing better and all that, looking forward to all that. Knicks bouncing back. Maybe we'll hopefully make the playoffs again. But Ariel, my man, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming
Definitely
on the
was.
show. Do you have anything you want to plug and push? Content wise, let the people know where they can find you on social media. Also,
just follow me on Twitter, A Pacheco, Pacheco NBA, A Pacheco NBA. Just follow me there. I'll do film breakdowns or whatever is on my head. Sometimes I'll write a story. Just follow me on Twitter and just stay updated with me.
Yep. Like I said, I appreciate you coming on, Ariel. This was a lot of fun. Make sure to follow him. I'll post all his social media on the description below. Make sure to follow me at Off the Ball Pod. Make sure to go follow the network, Off the Ball Network, OTB_network on Twitter. And on that note, guys, be well, be safe. Let's go Knicks.